All right, let's just jump right in because we are kicking things off with what is honestly the oldest question humanity has ever asked. What is God? I mean, think about it. For thousands of years, people have prayed, they've worshiped, they've fought incredibly brutal wars, written countless books, built these magnificent temples, and literally sacrificed their own lives, all because of this one single idea. But here's the kicker, and it's a truth that almost nobody really likes to admit out loud. Nobody knows. That is just the blunt reality of the human experience. Nobody actually has definitive proof that God exists. And on the flip side, nobody has definitive proof that God doesn't exist either. So everything we think we know, everything we're about to dive into today, is essentially a perspective. It's a theory, a philosophy. Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're exploring the divine mystery, and I want to be super clear about our goal here. We are not here to pick sides or decide who's right and who's wrong. Instead, we're going to impartially look at the source material, explore some totally different perspectives, and really try to understand why humans believe what they believe. We're going on a bit of a Socratic journey through different lenses of human thought, and it's going to be fascinating. All right, let's start with our first perspective, Section 1, the sociological lens, a need for order. To really grasp this first perspective, we kind of have to strip away modern civilization and look at how human beings just operate on a fundamental behavioral level. Imagine you take 10 complete strangers and put them in a room together. At first, there are absolutely no rules, no laws, no police, zero consequences for anything they do. What happens next? Well, step 2, disagreements inevitably pop up. Someone lies, someone steals from someone else, and that naturally leads right into step 3, where chaos ensues. People get violent. Without structure, human interaction just tends to break down. Okay, now imagine taking those exact same people and telling them, hey, there is an invisible being watching your every action. You tell them that nothing escapes its eyes, and after they die, every single thing they did will be judged. Do you think those people would behave differently? Probably, right? So the core point of this sociological theory from our sources is that the idea of God might have become incredibly powerful simply because early societies desperately needed moral order. When you don't have a government strong enough to watch everyone, the idea that someone is always watching is a pretty great way to encourage ethical behavior. Now, this doesn't prove God is just an imaginary concept, but it does suggest a really pragmatic reason why belief became so incredibly widespread and honestly necessary for human survival. But, history also gives us another lesson here, and it perfectly highlights the duality of belief. On one hand, religion has inspired some of the most world-changing kindness we've ever seen. We're talking hospitals, massive charity networks, deep compassion, and just boundless forgiveness. Yet, on the other hand, it's also been used to justify wars, horrific persecution, violence, and really deep-seated hatred. The profound question this source material brings up is this: did God do those things, or did humans just use God's name to justify what they wanted to do anyway? When you look at that contrast, you kind of have to wonder, maybe the problem isn't belief itself. Maybe the problem is us. Let's shift gears completely now. Section 2, the skeptic's lens, the burden of proof. If we look through the atheist perspective, it all relies on a super strict requirement for observable, tangible evidence to explain the universe. It really boils down to this incredibly famous quote: extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. A lot of atheists argue there just isn't enough evidence to warrant a belief in God. Their question is direct and beautifully simple. Where is the proof? The source material highlights that natural processes can explain so much of our universe today without ever needing to introduce a supernatural creator. For a skeptic, the fact that we don't know how something works isn't proof of God. It's just something science hasn't figured out quite yet. Moving right along into the realm of philosophy. Section 3, the logical lens, testing omnipotence. Let's slow down for just a second as we wade into this really fascinating logic trap that philosophers have been arguing over for centuries. Can an all-powerful God create a stone so heavy that even God cannot lift it? It sounds like a fun little riddle, right? But it's actually designed specifically to challenge our whole understanding of unlimited power, and it forces you into a very tight intellectual corner. Let's walk through this trap together, because it's inescapable. If the answer is yes, God can create that impossibly heavy stone, well, then there is something God cannot do, lift the stone. But if the answer is no, God cannot create the stone, then boom, there's still something God cannot do. This is what's known as the omnipotence paradox. Some philosophers argue that this totally shatters the concept of unlimited power.
Others push back and say the paradox itself just completely misunderstands what omnipotence actually means. And true to the theme of this explainer, there's zero universal agreement. The debate just rages on.
Let's change up the energy entirely now. Section 4, the spiritual lens, redefining the divine. Spiritual teachers, like Osho from our text, suggest that humanity might have been imagining God completely wrong this entire time. Just think for a second about these totally automatic miracles happening all around us. Trees grow. Entire stars are born out in the cosmos. Cells divide. Your own body heals a scratch without you ever having to actively think about it. A tiny child effortlessly grows into an adult. Life just continues, brilliantly and endlessly, without anyone explicitly directing traffic. It all just happens. And that leads us to a pretty massive reframing of this ultimate concept. What if asking who created God is just the wrong question? Maybe God isn't a person sitting on a giant throne somewhere out in space. Maybe God is existence itself, nature, life, consciousness, the very force that allows anything to exist in the first place. Whether you call it God, nature, the universe, or just reality, perhaps all these different belief systems are actually pointing at the exact same mystery, just using different vocabulary to describe it. Which brings us to our final stop today, Section 5, Embracing the Mystery. It's time to pull all of these diverse perspectives together to wrap up our dive into the source material. So, what is God? Is it a conscious creator? Is it just a pragmatic human invention to keep society in check? Is it the universe itself? Or is it something totally, entirely beyond human comprehension? I don't know. And truthfully, you don't either. The honest answer is that humanity is still searching. Maybe one day we'll find a definitive answer. Or maybe the search itself is the whole point of the human experience. Which leaves me with one final essential question for you. What is your perspective? I want you to think for yourself and form your own conclusions based on all these different lenses we've explored. Conversations like this don't happen because one of us holds the absolute truth. They happen because exploring these ideas helps us understand each other just a little bit better. Remember, sometimes the greatest wisdom isn't pretending you have all the answers. It's having the courage to simply say, I don't know. Until next time, keep questioning.